Judith Collins was on the AM show today saying agencies are being taught about privilege and white fragility. Can you give more details about this?
No, I can't, because actually it's not part of our government agenda. You can see that our focus from the budget is our response to COVID, our recovery from COVID, and dealing with New Zealand's long-term challenges. The Leader of the Opposition is obviously focused on other things.
She says teaching children about white privilege creates hatred and is divisive. What would be your response?
I would say that to imply that that is in the curriculum is wrong. It is not.
And how do you define white privilege?
Again, this is not something that's part of our agenda, so it's not something that we're teaching. And so my pushback would be to say that because it's not core to what we are doing right now as a government, it's not something that I've dwelt on. We are concerned with disadvantage, but you can see how we are working on that issue through the likes of our budget.
Can I ask? You're saying today that the speech today that the vaccine rollout and getting everyone vaccinated is going to be very important.
Question number 12, the Honourable Paul Goldsmith.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Education. Does he agree with the Prime Minister's comments in response to questions about white privilege in relation to education that, quote, it's not part of our government agenda and, quote, it's not something that we're teaching?
The Honourable
Mr Speaker,
Giannetti.
on behalf of the Minister, yes.
How does the Minister explain this Te Huri Hananui blueprint document guiding that program in schools, which says, quote, building critical consciousness means reflecting critically on the imbalance of power and resources in society and taking anti-oppressive action to do something about it for the better. It means recognising white privilege.
Mr Speaker, white privilege is not part of the New Zealand curriculum. I would like to inform the member, though, that the education system in the past hasn't worked for everyone in this country. It is inequitable. One of the biggest reasons for this is systemic racism. Te Huri Hanginui is one resource that works with communities to address this. Mr Speaker, Te Huri Hanginui is a professional resource for teachers. Let me help the member understand the difference between teaching children curriculum and building and supporting teacher competence and capacity. Te Huri Hanginui is about critical thinking, understanding who teachers are, the impact of their behaviour on students and understanding others' worldview.
Order. First of all, I mean, the response is getting too long. This is an area of discussion which a couple of weeks ago led us to some problems.
If teaching white privilege isn't part of this government's agenda, why are teachers going to Ministry of Education Accord teacher-only days where they are invited to, quote, take a minute to list your own privileges? This might include things like white privilege, which we've been talking about a lot recently.
Mr Speaker, teachers are required to teach New Zealand's curriculum to our children. White privilege is not part of that. However, injustice, inequality and privilege are themes that are explored in some teaching resources to build cultural competency amongst our teaching workforce. Mr Speaker, not talking about these concepts does Pākehā a disservice, and Māori children will continue to grow up thinking their position at the bottom of the heap is their fault rather than the systems that keep them there.
Aren't we far more likely to successfully address inequities, privileged or otherwise, by dealing with the truancy crisis in our schools than by transposing American culture wars into our classrooms?
Mr Speaker, on behalf of the Minister, that member needs to understand some of the underlying causes that are causing truancy.
David Seymour.
Can the Minister please help the New Zealand public and parents understand how Te Huri Hanginui is a resource for teachers about about white privilege. It's a resource provided to teachers, and yet teachers are not teaching about white privilege. How does the Minister reconcile those facts?
Mr Speaker, Te Hura Hanganui is a professional development program for educators. It was co-designed to address bias, strengthen equity and accelerate educational achievement and well-being of Māori. At a practical level, building the community's knowledge and experience might include things like New Zealand histories, colonisations and its effects.
Has she corrected the Prime Minister so she knows that under Labour it is part of the agenda and we are teaching it?
Mr Speaker, in the context of the Prime Minister's sayings and not the shortened version that the member has taken, no.
That concludes oral